All right, welcome to another episode of Rewiring Health. This is going to be a great conversation. I love this topic. So welcome, Linda Stelluti, to the podcast. I can't wait to hear what you have to share today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to dive deeper into these topics we're going to cover today, and it's really nice to meet you.
Yes, same. Absolutely. And yes, I can't wait to talk about this because we just chatted for a little bit here, but I am such a firm believer in like getting to the root cause of bigger issues. And that's what we're going to dive into today, and specifically talking about the gut and digestive issues. And I love what you do. And so I know there's always a story behind what people do and what inspires them. Do you mind sharing your story and what brought you to the point where you're now helping people in this area?
Yes, I think the journey that I've been on has been a huge catalyst for choosing what I've been focusing my practice in, which is helping with IBS and the brain gut connection. I noticed a pattern in my own life of kind of these psychosomatic manifestations of physical issues. If I was in a bad environment or a bad relationship, I would really notice in my body something would show up. I would start getting sick or things like this. And specifically along my journey, I struggled with anxiety, I struggled with depression. There were times when I felt really lost and really just mm, lost in what is life,
Mhm.
really searching for the deeper meanings and going along the path of what might have been the normal trajectory and just figuring out, this isn't really working for me. Like I'm doing these things that people say you do to make yourself happy, and I just
Yeah.
wasn't happy. I
Mhm.
really had to look deep within myself and begin to see what was happening. I experienced burnout because I was in these high stress environments, overworked, nervous system over dysregulated. And through that journey of being quite disconnected from my body, what it needs, working like 40 hours a week, all of these things, which, aren't necessarily conducive to our greatest well being and health, especially if we're not balancing it out with really good self care. My
Mhm.
body just burned out and I couldn't do anything. My digestion was deeply impacted. I was never officially diagnosed with IBS, but I definitely had chronic gut issues. I had to cut out a lot of different foods. I was really sensitive to different foods. And then, as I was beginning on my healing journey, I discovered hypnotherapy. And I decided that I really wanted to get to the root. And I'd heard all these amazing things about it, of how you're working with the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is where your autonomic body functions are, where your memories are, your emotions, your beliefs, your traumas, everything is stored within these deeper levels of the mind. And it's a method that helps to directly address those deeper root causes of what's going on a mind body level. And when I did that and I addressed those layers, my digestion completely shifted. I actually didn't need to stop. Like I stopped gluten, dairy. There's a lot of things I didn't eat. I can eat all of those things now and I feel fine. And that's why I don't always believe just removing the food is the key
Mhm.
to healing things like digestion, because it's so linked to our nervous system, stress, anxiety, all of these things, that there can be a deeper approach so that we can actually create a deeper resolution and start to, I think the goal isn't just to continually restrict, but
Mhm.
is to heal the gut so that eventually you can enjoy a more normal life. So
Yeah.
that's really what I help people with. And not only that, with anxiety, depression, and how can you craft and design a life that really nourishes you on a deeper level, and just becoming more aware of, we get programmed a lot that certain things are normal,
Mhm.
and really living in this modern way is so new in the history and the span of the human species, like living in this modern way, that we really have to tune back into our bodies and find out what's really true for us, and maybe slow down sometimes and listen if we need a break, or finding things that fill our cup back up. So that was part of my journey. And I'm really passionate about helping other people because I see so many people struggling with their gut,
Mhm.
and it's a huge issue and it just keeps growing,
Yeah.
like it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love so many things that you said there. And I couldn't agree more with all that. It is so true. And so many people feel just so hopeless because they're doing all these things. They're taking every piece of advice that, whoever they're going to see is saying. And like you said, removing things and feeling like nothing is really working for them. And then it's like that just is such a frustrating process. And yet they feel like they can't even enjoy life because they're doing this. And it's just this like compounding effect. And now the stress, I'm sure, around that compounds it even further and
Yes.
becomes a vicious cycle. So I love that. And I love what you do because it is so impactful, like having gut issues, and it affects every aspect of life. And if you're living like that and you feel like you constantly have to remove things that you enjoy, it's a really tough place to be in. So I love what you do. And it's so true what is, as far as the subconscious mind, how powerful it is, and diving into that, because I've seen in my life, I've seen people who I've worked with, we don't even realize that we're living in this environment and this mindset that is so unbeneficial, not beneficial to us at all, but yet we just continue to do it. So do you mind talking about that more? Because I am a firm believer in the power of the subconscious mind. Do you mind diving deeper, like talking about hypnotherapy, how it works, and also diving into more of that like mind-body connection as far as the gut health?
Definitely. Yeah, I can start a bit explaining what hypnotherapy and the subconscious mind is. There's a lot of beliefs around what hypnosis is that I think a lot of people tend to not fully understand because we get information from TV and movies, and it's really not like that, right? We're utilizing the deeper levels of the mind for positive change, to create healing, and to uncover the things that are hidden, buried, and suppressed within us. So the easiest analogy I like to think of it is like the subconscious mind's like our operating system. If you think you've got a computer, the screen is what you see. That's like your conscious mind. You think, you analyze, is what you're consciously aware of on a day-to-day basis. What you're not thinking about is the entire operating system, all the codes, all the programs, all the virus, every file that's stored in the computer. You never think about that. And over time, if you're not updating your computer, if it's super filled with too many things and it hasn't been processed, or there's viruses, which is basically just old programs that haven't, aren't matching the current update of your computer, things like that, then things start to not work quite so well. And when there's something wrong with your computer, you want to go to the root of the problem, not just put a band-aid on it. So that's like the subconscious mind. Think of it like the operating system. It's like what I mentioned before. Your past, your present is stored in there. Past experiences from your childhood, imprints, intense experiences that happen, that can actually be stored in the nervous system. And if it's not processed, it doesn't just magically go away. I think that's something that a lot of people think, if they just maybe consciously think about it, or they just push it to the side, it's not there because they're not thinking about it. But really, there's things under the surface, and we can even feel it. A common way of just tapping into that is, when you're just walking about and then you get this memory of an embarrassing situation. Have you ever had that?
Oh yeah.
Something from the past. Yeah.
Yep.
It's triggered and you're like, oh, you feel so embarrassed. It's like you relive that full experience, the emotions and everything. That's an unprocessed experience. And that lives still within you as being, you're carrying the weight of that experience that wasn't fully resolved. And so hypnotherapy can be used for many things. It can be used to improve confidence, self-love, do past healing, get over your fear of public speaking, blockages, and all of these things. It's very effective for that, relieving anxiety, things like this. But where my focus is, I do help with those things as well, but I also focus on the mind-body connection with chronic illness. What is happening? What happened around the time that these things started? What is your body trying to communicate with you? Where is the root of this in terms of your digestive issues? And how can we resolve it? And also make some tweaks, some little changes to your lifestyle that's really going to optimally create a big jump in your day-to-day living and how you feel. So the mind and the body are extremely connected. They're kind of manifestations of each other. And if you think, one way that's connected to digestion is the way that you think, what you're thinking, what you're feeding your mind, where you're focusing your attention, it creates emotional responses, right? If you're focused on positive thoughts, you feel really happy and joyful and excited. If you're focusing on all the things that are stressful that you've got to do, like let's say with the business, oh my God, I've got to answer all these emails, I've got to create this post, I've got to do all these things, can create stress in the body. Some stress is okay. It's normal, it's natural. It's a completely normal phenomena for each of us to experience. But living in a chronic state of fight or flight, we call this fight or flight if you're in stress response, cortisol being released, this can actually dysregulate important functions in the body. And usually the first things that are impacted is your digestion, your skin, your nails, your hair. And so how your thinking is affecting your nervous system response on some level. And the reason it affects these areas as well is because think of fight or flight, your body is getting ready to literally run, to fight. So the blood starts to pump more to the extremities of your body, away from your organs, to get ready for this danger. But now our danger is like emails and relationship stress. It's very different than it used to be. And so that your digestion is very low on the priority list. And if you're in a chronic, even a low level, and a lot of people live in a low level of chronic stress, and it's become normalized. And that's something that I would love to see being changed, is people really focusing on regulating the nervous system and recognizing when you're in a state of stress, and having little things like I teach all my clients 5-minute techniques that'll take you out of it very quickly, you know? So just things like that can have a huge impact.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's so true. There's so much stress that people experience just under the radar, and they just think that this is just how life is like, I work my 9 to 5 and then I put extra time in, I have this long commute, I got to take care of the kids, and like this is just how life is. And yes, there are responsibilities, but when we're not doing anything to help ourselves get back to that restful state, that's where the issue is, and it is so true. Like we were never designed to be in survival mode for decades upon decades. And it's like, if you ran your car on high gear for years upon years, you would burn out through the gas, the engine would be destroyed. I mean, but yet I expect our bodies to do this for years. And it's not meant and designed to do that. And it's so true that we have to absolutely be conscious of what we're experiencing, and recognizing that nothing goes without a cost, and everything that we do and experience in life has a cost, and it is our nervous system that is paying the price. And I like how you again shared how it can affect your skin, your nails. It can affect so many systems in your body, because that's what your autonomic nervous system is running. So when that's going on, you may experience all these symptoms and not realize that it is all the same root cause that is causing that. So meanwhile, what do most people do? They go get medication for this, they get a topical for that, they get, all the other things. But yet, unless you're addressing the root, you're just going to continue to be relying on those things to kind of suppress what your body's telling you. So such an important message there.
Definitely, even hormones, right? It affects the hormones. And then if you're in that state, you can go and try every single diet. Some diets can definitely work. That I definitely believe. But some people, they'll try every single diet and nothing's working for them. Then you really need to definitely look at what are some other things that could be contributing to it.
Yeah. And when you're working with someone, I know the hypnotherapy is a big part, and the subconscious mind. Do you also help with the gut microbiome and that part of it as well when we talk about gut health?
I don't, but it is very important. Stress also alters the gut microbiome. So I focus a lot more on the gut-brain connection, because there are experts in nutrition, and I always recommend people go to somebody that is something they're absolutely focused in niche, because that's a huge domain of study. And so working with a dietitian or a really great nutritionist can be super helpful for that in terms of the food aspect. And my expertise is definitely more in the mind body, but the microbiome is super important. I know fermented foods, evidence-based, taking in, increasing your fermented food. I'm in Mexico, I had to take a bunch of antibiotics for this like infection I had. And now I'm like in microbiome, like everyday fermented food, kefir, sauerkraut, probiotics. It's important. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. Yeah. And as far as the mind-body connection, can you just talk about a little bit about some of the biggest hindrances you see in people you've worked with? Like, what is impacting people that they don't have this connection between their mind and body? Like, I've seen that with many people I work with, is like kind of that dissonance. They're very disconnected. But what have you seen as far as that, and how do you help kind of cultivate that mind-body connection again?
Yeah, a pattern that I've seen is definitely more highly anxious people,
Mhm.
people who tend to have a more sensitive nervous system, which is not a bad thing. I'm also like that. I'm more empathic and highly sensitive. So that's one trait. Then the anxiety. Another thing is actually, which is interesting, people who tend to feel their intuition, whether they're conscious or not, more in their gut. So
Mhm.
people who process information, it's an information center, right? It's called the second brain for a reason.
Mhm.
The gut is encased in over 100 million neurons, and it can function independent from the brain. So it really is its own information center. And so like when you get your gut instinct or those butterflies in your stomach, I do believe that people process informations in different ways. And some people it's very gut instinct focused. And so the gut is also represented in how do we digest life, not just food, but how do we digest life? How do we digest emotions? If people are having trouble digesting life, digesting emotions, processing an experience, and just one example of that is some clients come to me and their gut issues started around a very big, intense experience that they just never quite recovered from. I think it really overstimulated their nervous system. And since then, it never came back. And they've been just having chronic gut issues. That can be in the case of like losing a loved one, exams, writing a thesis, having a really stressful job or a breakup, like, those experiences.
Mhm.
So that's definitely connected in that
Mhm.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And for someone who has maybe listening to this and is like, okay, I have that stressful job. I have all this stress. I have to take care of the kids. I have maybe they're taking care of their parents and their kids. Like, they have all these responsibilities. Where would you recommend starting for that person that says, like, I can't get those responsibilities out of my life, but how do I make the best of what I have going on in my life?
Yeah, that's a good question. We all have different responsibilities. It's not about necessarily quitting your job, but like you have a family, that's a lot of
Mhm.
responsibility.
Mhm.
What I recommend is taking 20 minutes a day to calm your nervous system on a daily basis. And the reason is because over time, you begin to create a new response pattern,
Mhm.
whether that's meditation, hypnosis, yin yoga, breath work, something that's going to help calm the nervous system on a regular basis. You start to feel more centered. You begin to create the pathways within yourself to tap into that in those moments of stress. It's all about learning. This is something I teach people too. You can actually shift your state of being, and it's
Mhm.
quite easy. It's like if
Mhm.
we don't know how to do it, we get stuck. We get
Mhm.
stuck in the stress. But there are actually ways where you can be in the full stress chaos of life and shift into inner peace.
Mhm.
It's all about where you focus your attention. And so that's something I can train people as well. But the practice,
Mhm.
it's really important, even if it's just 10, 20 minutes. 10 is a good place to start, but 20 minutes is ideal if
Mhm.
it's really important for you and you really want to start to create that change.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And I think sometimes people get caught up in thinking that they have to do this whole life overhaul, but really it is those small little daily things that compound and become consistent in your life that really make all the difference. So yeah, thank you for sharing that because I completely agree with that. And as far as your self-care routine, I know it varies for everybody, but I always love to
Yes.
hear everyone's self-care routine because someone may be listening and be like, I haven't tried that. Let me integrate that into my life because it is so individualized what works for each person. But do you mind just sharing what you do on
Yeah.
a daily basis to keep yourself in a regulated state?
Yes, that's a great question.
Mhm.
And I'd say it's changed over time. I think I've been like 10 years really into morning routines, evening
Yeah.
routines, trying this and this and this. What I
Mhm.
do now, the most important, I make sure I get enough sleep.
Mhm.
So I'm not forcing myself to cut out on sleep because a lot of healing, a lot of
Mhm.
processing happens during sleep. So getting really good sleep.
Mhm.
The other thing, I always journal,
Mhm.
spend maybe 10, 15 minutes journaling. I like to meditate. I used to meditate an hour a day. I don't do that anymore. I don't feel I need that level now, but maybe it's 10, 15 minutes in the morning, or if I feel I really need a break or I'm feeling, because it can happen as a business owner. I'm sure you probably experience this too, but where I just start to get a little bit overwhelmed with everything I have to do. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just like relax and figure out what is actually the thing I should be doing. So I'll close
Mhm.
my eyes and that I'll feel a little stressed and then I'll close my eyes and I'll be like, okay,
Mhm.
let me just do this one thing. And
Mhm.
then the next thing. That's very helpful. Showers are really relaxing to me. I live in a very hot place. So when I go out, I always come back and just the shower really, really helps me relax super
Mhm.
deeply. Um, Working out, doing resistance training has been great. Like 3 days a week, I would say. That really helps me feel strong in my mind and body. It's not just physical strength, it gives you strength mentally when you're
Mhm.
pushing yourself and growing them. Like I said, the mind and body, they're interconnected. So
Mhm.
you grow stronger mentally as well as a result of that. And oh, actually, the most important thing, I'm going to be completely honest,
Mhm.
is that I solo process myself often. This might not be like the most useful tool for people who don't know these techniques, but
Mhm.
because I'm trained in different methods to get to the root, I do it on myself a lot. So if something's come up, I'll guide myself through a process and resolve it internally and release it from the body. You can get like that tension in your heart or that pit in your stomach. That's kind of energy that wants to move. So that case, I'll do that on myself.
You mind just diving deeper into that? Because,
Yes.
just to kind of explain, like, what does that look like? If you were having like maybe a really tough emotion to deal with, like, what does that look like kind of soul processing that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm trained in like a variety of different techniques through hypnosis, but also through accelerated evolution, which are these verbally guided processes. There's a couple different ones that you can do, but it's where you actually have to feel the emotion fully. That is a part of it. You need to feel it to get to the heart of it because what you resist persists. If you're sweeping things under the rug and just not feeling them, they stay under the rug, but they're still there. It hasn't actually left.
Mhm.
So feeling it as a part of it. And then it's a little complex to explain the specifics of it, but once you feel it, you can go down the chain to get to the bottom of where it's manifested in the first place. You
Mhm.
can get back to what's at the core level of it. And from that place, release and clear it. So it's
Mhm.
a guided process that I go through. And I take my clients through this as well so that they can have that experience. And I teach emotional processing, and there's easy tools that are like 10 minutes long where you can do it at home, you can do it by yourself, like quick and easy techniques that help you to safely release and integrate whatever, if it's stress, anxiety, sadness from the day, you actually have a tool that you can do it by yourself. I don't want people to need me for every time something comes up, but I give them access to tools to help themselves for a lifetime with that. And I still use those tools. They're really
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah, that's so empowering too. And especially when you feel like you have the ability to help yourself. And because so much of, I would say modern medicine is like reaching out externally and expecting somebody to fix you, but it really does come internally. Like we have to be able to help ourselves in these moments and adjust to life as it arises. So I really like that
Yeah.
you're giving tools rather than just like, again, giving them the regular band-aid that is typical
Yeah.
in these
Yeah,
things.
it's learning self-regulation. It's
Mhm.
learning self-regulation so you have the power to come back into your
Yeah.
center, to come back into your peace. And the greatest benefit of this
Mhm.
is that when you move through these layers, you feel lighter. It's not just a little temporary relief. It's actually working on the deeper layer to do like think spring cleaning. It's letting go of all those things. So you feel lighter, you feel more at peace, you feel more centered. It really completely shifts how you move through your day. Like imagine
Mhm.
you felt 30-40% lighter, more present, centered, grounded throughout your day. It's huge. It
Yeah.
impacts everything, your relationships, your work, everything improves as a result of that.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I've experienced that myself. And I feel like the more I got into it, the more I was in tune when I felt things were getting heavier and I could then dive in
Yes.
deeper. So that's another benefit I think to all this as well, is like you get more in tune of where you're at before it gets kind of out of hand. Whereas like when you don't
Hmm.
have tools like what you talk about, for anyone who's going through life and you don't have these tools, you can just very much feel like your life is kind of out of control. And then that's when you start using some of these more passive coping mechanisms like drinking
Yes.
or, scrolling through social media or just like numbing out with TV. So it really is
Yeah.
so huge to not, again, all those things just do is suppress it, but to actually dive into it deeper, which can be uncomfortable for some people, but
Yes.
it's so, so important.
It can be uncomfortable, but it changes your life. Like in my early 20s, I struggled with different addictions. I was emotionally eating, drinking a
Mhm.
lot.
Yeah.
I had all these unhealthy, like watching way too much screen time, just all of these unhealthy coping mechanisms to disconnect me from not
Mhm.
having to feel the pain. It's like a numbing, it's a
Yeah.
distraction. It's getting you away to not feel that like empty void or that pain or that loneliness or whatever it is that's going on internally that keeps us in a cycle. If you don't break out of that,
Mhm.
that can go on for 10, 20, that can go on for a lifetime.
Yeah.
So this can shift completely out of that. I don't
Mhm.
struggle with that anymore. And I think that's been one of the greatest gifts to my life personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it just gives you more clarity too when you start diving into it. You can just see things for more of what they are, and rather than doing kind of
Yeah,
that self-blame game, like, oh, I did it again. I ate, emotional eating, I did it again. It's like a lot of that shame and guilt that you carry when you do that. Like you don't want to do that, but then it feels like almost like you have to kind of get back into that. And then it's that again, that vicious cycle. So yeah,
cycle.
yeah,
Yes.
it is. It's wonderful when you can like break through in that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can just see life for what it is. And it's just think there's more clarity when you start getting into that.
Yeah, clarity and control. Now you get to choose, do I put this in my mouth or do I not?
Mhm.
You actually create that space of choice.
Mhm.
And then it becomes a lot more easy as opposed to like kind of needing it to
Mhm.
feel some pleasure. I think we're
Yeah.
seeking relief. That's a big thing, is seeking relief from our
Mhm.
state of being.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like when you think about it as like a whole, like I think the pandemic was a big moment of kind of people realizing that they're not in a state where they want to be, but not necessarily knowing how to change that. And I think it was obviously awful in many ways, but in some ways it allowed people to have that pause where they realize like, I don't like this part of what I'm just living in this autopilot and I can get out of this. And have you seen that in people where that pause that we had kind of as a world was a catalyst for them diving deeper and maybe working with you or getting further into this?
So many people, so many,
Mhm.
not even just my clients, just people in
Yeah.
my life have
Yeah.
really reevaluated what's important, what
Mhm.
they want to do, the not working for a few months. Like I was in Canada when this was
Yeah.
happening.
Mhm.
A lot of people really loved not having to work all the
Mhm.
time. It gives you,
Mhm.
yeah, redirect. What is it that you actually want to do? It's very hard for people to
Yeah.
go back in person.
Mhm.
And I think if we can look at the benefits of what happened, that it did allow people to see things a little bit more clearly
Mhm.
in that way. It could have been very hard, very uncomfortable, very like I don't know, I'm seeing like a tower crumbling, like your world kind of
Yeah.
crumbles. But
Mhm.
on the other side of that, something that's more aligned can come through.
Mhm.
I see a lot more people living their passion, trying to learn how to have an online business,
Mhm.
trying to see, what, how can I be a contribution to the world? How can I'm
Mhm.
where I live in Playa del Carmen right now. So many people left their country to come be here and be digital nomads and pursue their dreams. And most people wouldn't be here if it actually wasn't for what happened. So I'm seeing a lot of change, a lot of people pursuing that
Mhm.
higher vision.
Yeah, yeah, it's at least there's some blessings came out of a tough situation
Yeah.
in that respect. Just kind of wrapping up here for someone who's listening to this and is like just really like this feels very far into them because if they feel like they're just in such a tough place, like that sounds great, but I don't know how I could even possibly get myself there. Do you have a recommendation for like just the smallest thing they can start with today? Like if they're listening, they're like, I want to just do something, but this feels like a big leap for me. What's something they could take away from this and just do it right after they listen to this and kind of see some of that change?
Yeah. If you're struggling with your gut, I have a freebie that people can go download. It should be in the link here, but also on my website, gut-directedhypnotherapy.com. It's a healing gut affirmation track. So if you already want to just see what is it like to follow a process to help to rewire the mind-body connection, to begin to reprocess how we're thinking and feeling around our gut, around digestion, around food. It's a really powerful process. And so I give that for free so people can go download that. In terms of nervous system regulation, I recommend everybody learns some breathing technique that they can basically do anywhere, anytime. There's a lot of them, 4-7-8 breathing, box breathing. There's different ones you can learn, and you don't even need a recording. You could be stressed at the line in the grocery store. This has happened to me before when there's lots of people. I'm like, oh, it's kind of stressful to be here. You just do the breathing. Nobody can tell.
Yep.
Right? No one knows you're doing it and you can already do it. That's like a little magic key. I think it's the most powerful way to quickly shift your state. And the other thing, if anyone's just curious about how they can create mind-body transformation and get to the root of what's been going on for them, could be with their gut, it can be other areas of life. I have a free discovery call as well, and I'm happy to jump in and see how I can support, if we'd be a good fit, and answer any questions as well, specific to what they're going through.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll make sure everything is in the show notes too for anyone listening. So that way you can grab those freebies and definitely get on a discovery call there. So thank you. And thank you again, Linda, for being here and sharing your journey and just sharing such important information for people who maybe are struggling with some gut issues right now and really need that help. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, same. I really enjoyed this conversation. And again, for everyone listening, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast and just leave a review or questions you may have about everything we discussed here, and we'll be sure to answer those for you. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.